My name is Doug Raycraft. I'm the former mayor of Southwest Middlesex and a former member of the board of directors and executive of AMO, and was its president from 2006 to 2008. For those of you that aren't familiar with the history of OMERS, 2006 was the year in which the province introduced Bill 206, a piece of legislation that transferred the control and responsibility of OMERS from the province to employers and employees, employer and employee members of OMERS. So OMERS is governed by two corporations, two boards, the Administration Corporation and the Sponsors Corporation. And this morning you're going to have an opportunity to hear from one of our representatives of each of those boards and some other information as well. We have three speakers. First of all, we only have 45 minutes for this session, so I'm going to try to move things along. And thank you very much for being up here, being here so early on Monday morning to hear this session. So the three speakers, I'll introduce them as they come forward. And after they've made their remarks, hopefully we'll have 15 or 20 minutes for folks to ask questions. I anticipate the number in the room will likely grow. I base that anticipation on past experience we've had with this early morning session. So we're going to get started. The first speaker this morning is James Koo. James is a partner in Aon. Aon is a corporation retained by MEPCO, the Municipal Employers Pension Center, to provide actuarial advice to AMO's appointees to the two boards that govern MEPCO, that govern OMERS. So James is a partner in the retirement practice of Aon Hewitt's Toronto office. He spent most of his 30-year career there. During his first tenure with Aon Hewitt from 1987 to 2007, he held a variety of increasingly senior positions, including leader of the Toronto retirement practice and head of the Canadian asset liability practice. James moved to Sun Life in 2007, where he spent 7 years holding positions as Vice President, Employee Pensions, and Vice President and Chief Risk Officer for Canada. James returned to Aon Hewitt in early 2014 and now serves as a trusted advisor to clients in both the private and public sectors. He is a fellow of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries and a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. He served as a member of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries Pension Plan Financial Reporting Committee and the Financial Services Commission of Ontario's Actuarial Advisory Committee. James holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Toronto with a double specialist program in Commerce and Finance and Actuarial Science. He was also the recipient of a number of highest standing awards, including the Governor General's Medal in the graduating class from Trinity College and the Financial Executives Institute Medallion at graduation in the Bachelor of Commerce program. So James, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Aon Hewitt, I'm pleased to be here to talk to you today about some of the challenges and opportunities associated with OMERS sustainability and some of the key things that MEPCO has been focusing on in this area. So let me start first with some good news. So as I'm sure you've all heard, the funded status of OMERS has improved and is now on an uptrend. And the reason for the improvement is both additional contributions from members and employers, as well as good investment returns. So on this chart, we can see that we have an upturn in the last few years. You might wonder about the 5 years from 2008 to 2012. And again, one reason for that is the funded status of OMERS is based on a smooth value of assets. And if you recall, 2008 was a very bad year with the global financial crisis. So over the years from 2008 to 2012, the loss from that year was reflected in the funding valuation. But that's all behind us now, and now we are back on an uptrend. But while we are in an uptrend, and OMERS is on track to eliminating the deficit, there are still many stresses on the system, and we shouldn't expect necessarily a smooth ride back to surplus. We may face negative surprises, and we need to be prepared to face those challenges. So what are some of the stresses that pension plans face? Well, the first one is historically low interest rates. Lower interest rates mathematically make the present value of a future income stream more costly. And low interest rates are also a sign of lower growth expectations. Lower growth expectations has implication on future investment returns. On this graph, we show for the decades 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, and the first 5 years of this decade, what the Government of Canada long bond yield was at the beginning of the period, and then Canadian equity returns, long bond returns, and inflation during the following 10 years. So as you can see, mathematically, bonds cannot achieve the double-digit returns that we saw in the 1980s and 1990s. With interest rates currently at 3% or lower, we just cannot get to 10% plus. Returns from equities and alternative asset classes offer potentially higher returns, but without declining interest rates providing a boost, and with most experts predicting slower growth ahead, future equity returns are also likely to be more modest. So in the 80s and 90s, pension plans were used to seeing compound average returns in the double digits, and returns will be harder to achieve from here on out. While there'll still be individual good years, such as the year OMERS had last year, there will also be some poor years, and overall, it's going to be much harder to achieve compound average returns in the double digits. Another stress we're facing is we're living longer. That's great news for all of us, but it makes pensions much more expensive. So this chart shows life expectancy at age 65 for males and females under standard actuarial tables used in the industry. And over the last 30 years or so, you can see for a 65-year-old male, life expectancy has increased from 82 to 88, and for females, from 86 to about 90. So that's a 4 to 6 year increase, and that might not seem very dramatic, but in terms of the period spent in retirement, that's a 20 to 40% increase in the period spent in retirement. So all these factors combined, declining rates, lower expected returns, and increasing longevity have combined to put a heavy load on pension plans. Retirement is expensive, and it's more expensive than we previously thought, including the cost for those who are already retired. Combined with these stresses, we also have the issue of aging population and maturing plans. This graphic is taken from the OMERS annual report, and as you can see, back in 1975, OMERS had 10 active members for every retiree, and that's been declining to today where we have about 2 actives for every retiree. And it's not just the numbers of people, but in the box at the bottom you can see that the liability for a retiree is much higher than a liability for an active. So overall, currently we have the total OMERS plan liability is equal to 452% of contributory earnings for active members. So that kind of indicates why it's getting harder and harder to deal with surprises with contribution increases.
Can you actually explain that in a little more detail, that 452% number?
Yeah, so basically we look at the total OMERS liability and divide by the contributory payroll of active members, and the ratio is 4.5 times. So if you have a 10% variation in liabilities, that's going to be 45% of active payroll. Okay. So as a minor change is relatively large relative to contributory payroll, and it's getting harder to deal with that purely through contribution increases. Whereas if you look back at 1975, I don't have the figures from back then, but the ratio would have been lower. Okay. So with that in mind, if there are negative surprises, what levers does OMERS have to deal with deficits? Really, there are 2 key levers: increasing contribution rates or reducing future benefits. And both of these levers affect active members only. And again, as we saw with the maturity of the plan and the lower ratio of actives to retiree, it's a much heavier burden now than it was 20 or 30 years ago. MEPCO has been providing input to our AMO representatives on these issues, and the input was important in the development of the new funding management strategy, which was put in place last year. A couple of the key elements of that new strategy were, first, to build reserves during good periods, because we know that returns will be volatile and there will be down years at some point in the future. So building reserves will help reduce the likelihood that dramatic changes are required in the future. Secondly, the funding management strategy now sets a maximum on the contribution rate. We know contribution rates are already very high, and whether you're a plan member or an employer representative, you need to have some certainty on what the maximum contribution rate will be, and now that has been agreed upon and set in the funding management strategy. So both of these factors focus mainly on the contribution side. We believe there's opportunities to enhance sustainability further in terms of the other lever, which is the benefits lever. So again, on the benefit lever, as we said earlier, the only changes that can be made are to future benefits. Benefits earned in the past cannot be changed, so this affects a relatively small population of active members, which means you might need to make a relatively dramatic change to future benefits in order to restore the balance. This might present problems in terms of intergenerational fairness. So the question we would ask is there a way to spread the burden across a larger group so that more modest changes might be sufficient instead of a very large change for a small group of active members? So one area that we've looked at and many plans have looked at is adjustable benefits. So are there benefits that can be temporarily reduced during adverse times to help restore that balance? And one area in particular that many plans have looked at is indexation, such as temporarily reducing indexation when the plan is facing financial difficulty. You might ask, why are we looking at this now? Because as we saw earlier, the news is good now, right? The funder ratio has improved and we're on an uptrend. So I think I would say to you that we need to look at this now because hopefully this is something that will never be needed. We want to have it in place in case it is needed. If we weren't going to look at this now, suppose 15 years from now, we didn't look at this today, and 15 years from now, there was another financial crisis and a large deficit. Then the plan would be in the same position it is today, except the ratio of actives to retirees would be even smaller. And again, the only mechanisms then would be increasing contributions or reducing benefits for future benefits for active members only. But if we can consider changes now to enhance sustainability in terms of making some benefits adjustable, that will go a long way to further enhancing sustainability of the plan. So those are my comments, and I'll be happy to, I'll be passing it on, and I'll take questions later. Thank you.
Thanks, James, and I intend to open it up to questions after we've heard from all three speakers. Before I get to our next one, though, I want to just add a little bit to that quick history lesson I gave at the beginning this morning. In 2006, when OMERS was devolved to its members, it was AMO's decision that because not all municipalities are OMERS employers, and not all OMERS employees work for municipalities, that it was better to put the responsibilities that were being assigned to AMO in Bill 206 to a separate corporation. So that's when AMO created the Municipal Employers Pension Centre of Ontario to take responsibility for AMO's responsibilities under the provincial legislation. And MEPCO is under the oversight of a board of directors made up of 10 members, and I've been chair since its inception in 2006, and we were joined by a new member earlier this year, Rick Goldring, the mayor of Burlington, who's down here at the second table in front of me, is here this morning. I don't think there are any other members of the MEPCO board here, but I did want to acknowledge Mayor Goldring's presence, and thank you for being here. Our next speaker is Marianne Love. Marianne is co-chair of the Sponsors Corporation, and she also co-chairs of the Sponsors Corporation Board, and she also co-chairs the OMERS Joint Council. Marianne is a senior consultant for McDowell Associates, specializing in governance practice, job evaluation, pay equity, and compensation and performance management systems. Marianne was a member of the OMERS Board before 2006, before devolution, from 1999 until 2006, and has remained a member of the Sponsors Corporation Board after the changes occurred. She has a law degree from Osgoode Hall Law School of York University and a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Windsor. She has over 25 years of experience working and consulting in municipal government. Marianne.
morning. I'll get those on. There we go. Thanks very much, Doug, and thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to you this morning a little bit about OMERS. As you know, our pension plan provides retirement security to individuals working in our sector. With close to 470 plan members, upwards of 900 employers, 410 municipalities relying on us to keep the OMERS pension plan secure and sustainable. We have a responsibility that we take very seriously amongst your four representatives here before you today. Now, James has noted some of the issues faced by pension plans and OMERS, and Mike and I are going to address what OMERS is doing about it. As many of you know, and Doug has sort of highlighted, that we have at OMERS we have a bicameral governance system, meaning the governance is shared by two boards. We have the Sponsors Corporation, which I reference as SC. It's a representative board, and it's responsible for the plan design, which is contributions and benefits. We also have the Administration Corporation, which is referenced as AC, and that's a fiduciary board, and it administers the benefits or pays the pensions, and it invests the assets. Now, each board has distinct roles and responsibilities, which are important to the success of the plan. However, I think most importantly is the collaboration between the two corporations, those two boards, working together to ensure our responsibilities are aligned, and we are able to ensure that OMERS is on the path it needs to be to secure a sustainable future. This was underscored in the 2012 review, the external review that Tony Dean undertook. There were a number of key initiatives that came out of that review, and OMERS is experiencing those positive outputs today. We have an independent board chair at the Administration Corporation, and we have a higher capacity Administration Corporation board. And that is the board, as I said, that secures the investments as one of the key elements in terms of a sustainable plan. Joint strategic planning is one venue where the two boards collaborate and work together to ensure consistent strategy across all of our areas of responsibility. It's important that we drive to a common understanding and are aware of each other's choices as it relates to risk management, asset management and strategy, asset management and market strategy, I should say, plan value to members, brand reputation, innovation. In 2015, this year, OMERS will have one strategic plan. Membership growth, and James has highlighted that, this component, it's an important strategic imperative, not impairment, it's an imperative. Actually, it is actually a bit of an impairment today, but it's an important strategic imperative for pension plans like OMERS. All right, as you can see in terms of our demographic shift and our ratios of active to retirees, it's something that OMERS is very much focused on. Now, the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan, or the ORPP, as it's come to know, is a risk to growth at OMERS. All right, you may have seen MEPCO's paper outlining some of the implications in the ORPP in relation to municipalities and to OMERS. You can source that paper on the MEPCO website, and also you will see two letters to government that were precursors or in and around the date of that paper. You'll also see on the website last week's update regarding the government's announcement. Okay, so it puts it all there for you. So now, given the announcement from government, while we know that OMERS will now be exempt as a comparable plan to the ORPP, subject to a verification process, our municipal part-time employees that aren't in the OMERS plan will be members of the ORPP come January 1st, 2020. So this has two major impacts. It's going to impact the OMERS growth strategy, so we got to get busy on that. It's also going to impact your municipal budgets. So you'll want to stay tuned, access that site, access your representatives and those working at MEPCO in order to understand the implications for your municipalities as we're moving forward. The ORPP is one of the many risks that we are considering in our joint strategic planning at OMERS. Both boards are working together to ensure that our plan design and our sustainability is robust and coordinated so as to manage our risk appropriately and bring us back to being fully funded by or on or before, actually, 2025. So I'm going to speak to the SC's funding management strategy. James has highlighted that a little bit. I'll go a little bit deeper on that. And Mike is going to address the AC's investment strategy. The Sponsors Corporation's funding management strategy basically articulates how we approach plan design. That's the contributions and benefits in the plan. And one of the goals when developing this strategy and the changes that we made to our annual decision-making process was really to better focus our annual decision-making and make sure that our annual decision-making was taking place within the context of a framework. And we also wanted to provide greater transparency and clarity to the members and the employers in terms of how the plan is being managed financially. Now, on this slide, you'll see a number of zones, and I'm going to just walk you through those a little bit so better explain the strategy. It sets out how the Sponsors Corporation is going to manage contribution rates and benefit plan changes to address the funding sustainability of the plan. And it doesn't just deal with our path to get to the point of being fully funded. That is clearly a goal. However, we want to make sure that our strategy and our framework is capable of taking us through the good times and the bad times. And I have to say, in my time with OMERS, which now goes back to about 1999, I've experienced both. I've experienced times of surplus. I have to figure out what to do with those surplus monies. And those of you that lived through that will remember some of the changes that were made. And without the context of a broader framework as we have now today. And we are also currently living through a deficit zone. So this framework is basically a new initiative, a better initiative to set the context for more focused decision making, as I said earlier. So in terms of the framework, when we're in deficit, which is under 100% funded, and as James has said, we're 90.8% funded based on the last valuation. In this zone, we balance the contribution and benefit changes to address the deficit. So now there is an upper limit on how high contribution rates can travel. Today, the contribution rates are at a blended rate at 21.3%. The cap on contribution rates is 22.6% combined. So what this means is, if the contributions at that cap, this is to be at a date certain, it's not today, if at a particular date, given the outputs of evaluation, if we are required to raise the contributions up to 22.6%, and still it's not sufficient to meet the funding requirements that are known to us, then benefit reductions will be made. All right? The decision then at the SC will be which benefit and what are the parameters around that benefit in terms of the decision being made. So once we're fully funded, as you can see on the screen, it takes the pressure off contribution rates. However, our goal will be to build a reserve to 110% funded. All right, once we're in surplus, over 110% funded, we'll maintain the funded status at 110%, and then there will be contribution reductions and restoration of past benefits where possible. Okay, so this is, as I said, the framework under which this is basically our guideposts, and our annual decision-making will be made in this context. So we've made decisions to our annual decision-making process to link up and to now ensure a direct link between our annual decisions and the funding management strategy. The steps and the timing are here. I'm not going to take you through this slide in detail, but there are a couple of key points that I just wanted to highlight. We only go through the decision-making process now if changes are actually needed to address the funding, to address the strategic objectives. So each year, we check the annual valuation, and we check those results to the funding management strategy thresholds that I've just described. And this process is really built around our desire to communicate and to ensure broad awareness amongst the employers and the membership. Now, we followed this process first time in 2015, and no changes were called for under the funding management strategy. So therefore, there were no benefit or contribution rate changes contemplated, and we communicated this as early as possible this year, and we avoided the noise, and I underscore noise because we've had a lot in years past. So we avoided that this year, through the adoption of this process. We chose to file the evaluation reports with FISCO, and what this means is now we have lead time, because we don't need to file our next valuation until 2018. The current contribution rates meet regulatory approval until the end of 2018. So this lead time allows the Sponsors Corporation to consider possible plan benefit changes that may be required should our funding management strategy dictate within those thresholds. And currently, we're reviewing forms of reductions in indexation. Okay, just as James has underscored. Now, there are other reasons to change benefits in the plan that aren't necessarily related to sustainability, but more so plan design. So an example, this would be waiver of contributions while on disability. So that proposal has come forward, the Sponsors Corporation has, and will continue to review this change and these types of changes, and we will communicate before decisions are made. So this describes the SC's changes in relation to managing the funded status of the plan at a more strategic level and with greater focus. And I just wanted to share some of those highlights with you this morning. So now I'm going to send it over to Michael, and he's going to walk through some of the investment strategies. Thanks.
Thanks, Marianne. And the third speaker, as Marianne has indicated, is Michael Fenn. Michael is a member of the Administration Corporation Board representing AMO. He works as a management consultant at Fenn Advisory Services, Inc. He was an Ontario Deputy Minister under 3 premiers, and one of the ministries he held was Municipal Affairs and Housing, following which he served as CEO of several Crown agencies. His municipal career included being City Manager of Burlington and later CAO of Hamilton-Wentworth Region. He's been profiled with a chapter in Professor David Siegel's new book, Leaders in the Shadows. Michael has written extensively on investment in public infrastructure. In 2010, he was one of 2 Ontarians named to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario's Honor Roll. I remember the event well because coincidentally, I happened to be the other person named at that time in 2010. So, Michael, I'll turn things over to you, and you can bring some remarks from the Administration Corporation.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to walk through several slides so that fairly briskly, so that we get an opportunity to get to the Q&A session. First, I guess I should say a number of you were at the information sessions that we have spring and fall with the OMERS, and I'd certainly encourage you to attend those sessions. And at the spring information session, we had our newly appointed CEO, Michael Latimer, outline 2 key priorities for OMERS for 2015, and they are aligning resources and building results. And that's obviously with the goal of having a secure and sustainable plan, and formulated in part through discussion with you, with stakeholder organizations, including MEPCO and its members. The aligning resources objective obviously involves having the right people in the right places and all on the same step, to use his phrase, and to be invested in those folks, in capable, experienced professionals with solid track records. The other half of building results is obviously meeting, or if we can, exceeding expectations from the membership, and critical for that is that's critical for achieving our future pension payments. We had a good year in 2014, as James touched on, with a return of 10%, and the board and management are very actively engaged in trying to maintain that progress. We have improved, as a result of investment returns and contributions, we've improved our funded status by 2.6%, or about $1.5 billion. And that improvement is driven in part from contributions, but of course that's an in and out exercise. We received $3.7 billion in contributions and paid out $3.1 billion in benefits. So the other half of the equation is the 6.5 net investment income that we achieved that year. About 75% of the contributions go to the funding of the benefits, and the further 25% of the contributions is what we use to pay down the funding deficit. In 2014, the contributions were on average 21.3%, as was mentioned earlier, of contributory earnings, and about 16% of that, and that's of course 50-50, represents contributions to the fund for actuarial benefits earned in that year, and the remaining 5.2% represents contributions to pay down the funding deficit. We had a solid performance year. We had net returns of 10%. The benchmark is 7.7. And we've had a number of, this is the one-year results. The 5-year results were almost 8%. The 20-year result likewise is 7.9%, and that exceeds our funding requirement of 6.5. So it's a good story over time, but the challenges continue, as James was saying. We've had solid both public and private markets returns, 10.7 in the public markets and 9.5 in the privates. And the absolute return benchmark is addressed each year by the OAC, the Administration Corporation Board, and our objective obviously is to invest prudently and to keep a diversified range of investments to earn consistent long-term results. Diversification is a key part of that risk mitigation strategy. I think it's important for you, representing employers, to know the way in which those funds are invested. So it's not just in the public equity markets or in bonds and things of that kind. It's quite diverse, and it's important to have the right balance in public and private market investments. We have about 15% of your portfolio invested in real estate, both in Canada and around the world. Similarly for infrastructure, and we also have quite an active private equity portfolio, about 12% of the total assets. We're a long-term investor in your communities, and this is just an illustration. We've have some $15 billion in private investments. Some good examples would be Bruce Power, which provides about 30% of Ontario's electrical energy. Life Labs, which is in laboratory services supporting Ontario healthcare. Various healthcare facilities across the province. A lot of the hospital expansions that your municipalities will have made a contribution towards would have been part of our investment portfolio as part of the Infrastructure Ontario program. And outside Ontario, OMERS invests in similar kinds of assets around the world: natural gas, transportation networks, electricity transmission systems, and so on, in countries as diverse as Sweden, Finland, Czech Republic, the UK, and so forth. But it's not all overseas, it's not all infrastructure, rather. We also have quite an active portfolio in real estate. Some of the best quality real estate, commercial real estate and retail establishments in Canada and around the world are OMERS properties. We invest in the world's great cities to ensure good returns: London, Paris, and in North America, New York, Boston, and Washington, as well as in Canada. Real estate holdings are important in such major centers as Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, and so forth. And so I guess our overall approach is summarized there. I guess, are towards the point where we can start to take questions. So I think I'll just leave it there. If there are any questions on investment, my colleague Penny Somerville is on the investment committee, and I'm going to look to her. And we also have some senior OMERS staff in the room that have undertaken to answer the really tough questions for us. So thanks.
Thank you, Michael. And before I get to questions, I just want to acknowledge that the MEPCO board is very pleased with the changes that you've heard about this morning. I can't guarantee that those changes would not have occurred without the involvement of MEPCO, but there are certainly issues on which we have been very active advocates over the last few years. Definitely that funding management strategy is a major step forward. We're very pleased to have seen that put in place last fall. So I will now take questions from representatives, delegates from municipal councils. I think everybody knows the drill. If you have a question, please advise us of your name and the municipality that you represent. So, questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Carl Moore, Jura-Dummer in Beaver County. And my question has to do with the future of the plans. Defined benefit plans are no longer almost in the public sector. Is there any move about to look at having new employees going on to a defined contribution plan? Because that's the reality in the outside world. Defined benefit plans are just too expensive.
Thanks, Carl. Well, the design of the plan itself is the responsibility of the Sponsors Corporation. So, Marianne, can I turn that over to you?
Oh, yeah. I need to come up.
I'm not
Right
sure.
here?
I think that mic's
I
out.
can do it right here, sure. Thanks, thank you, Carl. It's a good question, and certainly some of the Sponsors Corporation employer representatives have had their minds around that. But the reality is OMERS is a defined benefit plan. It's an investment that we've made as municipal employers paying into the plan. It's a very good benefit structure, and we believe at the Sponsors Corporation, when the plan that, or the board that's accountable for the design and the formula, et cetera, in the plan, that we can continue with the defined benefit plan and ensure its sustainability. So in terms of new members coming in and maybe having, if you will, a split plan, we haven't talked about that at the Sponsors Corporation, and you can imagine we would probably be met with major opposition from the unions that are represented at the table as well. And just as a reminder, underscores basically what we had to go through to get the funding management strategy seated. We need a 2/3 vote at that table. So this is not a fully employer-paid system. It's equal contributions, equal representation. So we're in it together. And we at the board, at the Sponsors Corporation board, believe that we can continue to move forward with defined benefits. Now, with regards to part-time, and perhaps how part-timers may be brought into the plan, that might open up some discussion. And as I said in my presentation, my remarks, it's something we really need to watch and be mindful of, because we all employ part-time staff in our municipalities. So we need to think about it, and we need to figure out what's best for the plan and what's best for our own organizations.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. And just to underline part of what Marianne said, a change in the design of the plan requires the support of 2/3 of the members of the board of the Sponsors Corporation. The likelihood of getting that at this point in time appears to be extremely low.
I think I might just want to say, and I just had to get my glasses on to read Mike's note. Thanks, Mike. But it does go to the demographic and the growth challenges that we have. The new employees coming in tend to be younger employees. Youth is what we need to sustain this pension plan. This pension plan will not be sustainable with an aging demographic. So we're mindful. That's why growth is really with a high level target for us, and definitely major focus. So we're looking at what's in the employees, what's within those employees coming forward in terms of age, demographic, et cetera. And again, in order to secure a sustainable plan for those who are already in it. So, thanks, Mike.
Okay, other questions? Mayor Goldring.
From Burlington. The comment that was made earlier, thank you. The comment that was made earlier with regard to the potential adjusting of benefits for our grandfathering existing employees and only adjusting benefit for newer employees. Can somebody provide some clarity on that? Is that a practice now? If we got to the maximum of 22.6% contribution level, is that what we would do? We would not not have a reduction in benefits across the board. It would be with a certain set of employees. Can we have some clarification?
Yeah, James, I think that was your comment, so I'll come to you for an answer.
Thanks, Rick. That's a good question. So again, due to pension legislation, you cannot change the past. So you can only change benefits for the future. And that's where my comments on adjustable benefits were, I think this is the opportunity to enhance sustainability. So as I said, if we don't make any changes now, if in 15 years' time there's another crisis, then at that point we'll have even fewer actives to retirees, and we'd be looking at that smaller group of actives to say we got to increase your contributions or reduce your future benefits. But if there can be agreement to say from this point on, let's say we say from this point on, benefits earned after this date will be adjustable, say it's indexation. Then if we, but from this point on, so we still cannot change the past. So we say from this point on, indexation will be adjustable if the plan is facing difficulty. Then if we face a crisis in 15 years' time, we would be able to look not just at future benefits, but we would have 15 years in the bank of benefits that we can make adjustments to. So you have to do this in advance so that you are ready for the next crisis. If you wait until the crisis happens, you're still in the same situation where you have very limited opportunities in terms of what you can do.
But the decision to do that has not been made yet, right? Is that what we're hearing?
That's right. The decision has been made, but we're studying it. Now, we have, so as I said, we filed our evaluation, we have lead time, we have our parameters around the framework the management strategy. So we're looking at benefit changes, and the benefit changes we're looking at are forms of indexation. It could be, as James has laid out, more of on a conditional or provisional basis, or more, I guess, time-based, if you will. At the time of the event. So we're looking at it now, and so that we'll be ready if we need to be. But the funding management strategy said, as we agreed to, right, with the 2/3 vote, we didn't need to make any changes this year. Okay.
It's probably worth noting that the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, which found itself in a similar state as OMERS a couple of years ago, did reduce the credits earned for indexation on a go-forward basis. For a temporary period of time. They've now eliminated that, and credits are being earned for 100% indexation as they were before the change, and they've indicated that they expect they will be restoring those credits that were lost during that interim period in the very near future. Very near future. Next question. Yes, sir.
Peter Ketchum, Township of the Archipelago. While I was listening to, I guess, your strategy, I inferred that you are feeling that you will be in competition with the new Ontario pension plan to some degree. And I also inferred that there might be a feeling that the Ontario pension plan, when it starts, might have larger increases in both employer and employee costs. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think it is a fair thing to say. Yes, we are looking at the eligibility requirements for part-time employees in OMERS. Currently, the rules are such that an employer may elect mandatory participation. If the employer hasn't elected, then the employee can elect after they hit the Pension Benefit Act hours thresholds. Other plans have taken different approaches. Other plans have had their hands wrapped around those part-time employees and brought them into the plan. So we're looking at that and seeing what we can do about it. That's good for the growth of our plan. There are differences in contribution rates, as you can well imagine. Anybody that's checked out the website or read any of the media pieces, the contribution rates are lower, and it's a lower benefit for the part-timers. So the contribution rates are combined, I think it's 5.8%, 2.9% per side. And the benefit is definitely not comparable, in our view, to the OMERS benefits. So we have some choices to make through our 2/3 voting arrangement at the board. I can't speak for the OMERS, or sorry, for the government's investment strategies in terms of how this is going to move forward, but I think we're all watching and to see whether or not that plan will be able to be sustained at 2.9% contributions per side. I think that's about as far as I could go with that one.
It's now 8:15, and the official opening of the conference is at 8:30 with an address by the keynote speaker, Anthony Williams. Before we close this off, I just want to remind everyone that MEPCO depends on the voluntary contributions of municipalities across the province for its continued operation. Those contributions, recommended voluntary contributions, are based on the number of employees, OMERS members, employed by each municipality. We send out a notice every November, December, asking for those, and we very much appreciate municipalities that have continued to support us. Sometimes the information doesn't always get to the council table, but we tend to follow up. We do tend to follow up with municipal councils that we don't hear from. So thank you very much for the contributions we have received to date, and we urge you to continue to make them. Again, I thank you for attending this morning, and I'd ask you to join me in thanking the 3 speakers we've had. Donations on their behalf are being made to the Ontario Municipal Disaster Relief Fund to acknowledge their contribution to the program today. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Doug.
Now if they have other questions, they'll come.